Hey everybody, this is Dr. William Clark here, and before we jump into our show, I wanted to share a resource with you that can help you get your podcasting off the ground. Anchor is the one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it is 100% free and really easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad to you. So if you want to get started with podcasting and you want to make it as simple as possible, go ahead and visit anchor.fm/start. Now, let's jump into our show. Hey everyone, this is Dr. William Clark here, your host of the Dr. William Clark podcast. Glad to be with you again and excited about podcasting. I'm always excited about podcasting. I'm always excited about the opportunity to share and to convey messages of strategy and hope and ideas as it relates to fundraising. And I wanted to come on quickly and to share just a couple of thoughts with you today. This is a podcast where we're just taking it easy a little bit today. There isn't an organized format for this particular podcast, but I thought I would answer some questions that I tend to get on a regular basis, and just wanted to go through a few of them rather, because there's quite a bit. But I wanted to use this time to kind of just talk with you. So forgive me if I'm not looking right at you. I'm looking at the screen here off to the side, but I want to make sure that I address some of the questions you guys have. And a lot of the questions I get are relative to the content I share as it relates to fundraising, as it relates to grant writing. And I appreciate those questions and concerns because, quite frankly, without you, we have no show. So wanted to just take a moment to answer a few of these and to kind of give some insight into what's happening when you're fundraising. Here's one I tend to get often, right? What happens if you're the perfect organization on paper, right? You're the right fit on paper, but you don't have a history of success. Quite frankly, that particular question I answer in detail in my grant writing 101 masterclass. And I answer how to resolve that issue, how to respond to that issue, because that question comes up quite a bit, particularly if you are new to the space or if you're new to fundraising or grant writing, or you decided to launch your nonprofit and you just started this year, or you started last year, or within the past couple of years. You don't have the history that a lot of your competitors may have. And so your competitors not only have history, they have, they've been around for a while, they performed for a while, they have relationships that have been established for quite a while. And so here you come because you have this vision and hope and belief that you can and should do something about whatever problem you're trying to solve through the lens of a nonprofit. And, that's a worthy reason to start a nonprofit. And I think when you have that type of situation where you're trying to get off of the sidelines and you're going to go ahead and launch something, it's difficult to convince donors, whether they're individual donors. It's difficult to convince sponsors or even funders that you are an organization worth giving to. And the difficulty of doing that is tied to the fact that you don't have longevity in the industry. Now, there are cases where you have people who have longevity in the industry as a person, where they have a history prior to launching an organization, and that particular person is able to leverage historical achievements, historical performance to convey the message that, hey, I'm able to perform at the level of funding a funder may ask for or a grant may ask for. And so that's a scenario that is realistic. Now, depending on the context of this question and depending on where this person is coming from, I can tell you that part of the issue you may run into if you are new to the industry, you have a work history, but you're new to the industry, you're new to the problem you're trying to solve, or you haven't developed enough experience from the perspective that a nonprofit believes you should have, or a foundation believes you should have it, the question becomes different, right? How do I transition from being a perfect fit on paper and not having the requisite experience? Now, the short answer, I think, that I can provide without spilling the beans and without giving away what I teach in the Grant Writing 101 Masterclass, I think part of the answer that I can give here is for you to look at what you have done, because the key word to the question is a history of success. So what I would challenge you to think about in this podcast is, how are you defining history of success? Now, you already have the definition from the funder. You already have the definition from the individual donor who is setting the standard that defines giving, that defines their level of partnership and what they're looking for. When you look at their definition and then you tie into that your own definition, the question becomes, how do you define a history of performance? How is that defined within the context of the nonprofit world? How is that defined in the context of your for-profit history that you may or may not have? How is that defined in the context of problems you've tried to solve in the past, or your volunteerism, etc.? How you define that helps you work through the answer to this question. And I go much, much deeper and I get specific in the Grant Writing 101 Masterclass. There's an alternative and perhaps complementary answer that I can give to that I go into with the Grant Writing 101 Masterclass. And it is tied to the history. It's tied to who you've come across in your history. And unfortunately, I'm going to leave it at that, because the more I talk about it, the more I want to give you the answer. But I need to hold some of that back for the Grant Writing 101 Masterclass. This is why I'm encouraging you guys to be a part of the Grant Writing 101 Masterclass, because that particular answer, that particular question is a question that I get often. And there is a simple yet profound answer to that. But I think, in order to give that answer and give it its just due, the Grant Writing 101 Masterclass provides a depth of context as to why my answer is what it is to that question about how do I close the gap between myself and the funding I'm looking for if I don't have the 3 to 5 years of experience. Here's another question I get a lot too. Are there more dollars given out during a particular cycle? I will say that grants are cyclical. I will say that as of this recording, and depending on the date this is published, this is likely a good time where grants are being released. Because we're applying quite a bit and we're putting out a lot of apps. We're saying no to a lot of apps. But I think what's more important than the cycle itself, what's more important than understanding grant cycles, is throwing that question away. I remember when I started in the industry, and I thought that the cycle meant a lot, and it has relevance. It does. But you got to think that you are a singular institution trying to respond to multiple grant applications that are released by a number of foundations and individual donors, etc. And in order for you to be responsive to what that foundation is looking for, you have to balance the interest of that foundation and the other foundations that you're targeting for your work, your program, your institution, etc. And given that, you're going to come across the reality that there are cycles and patches of time where a ton, and I mean a ton, of grant apps are due at the same time, like it's January 2020. And there are a number of grant apps due now, a number of them due early, mid-February, same in March. When you look at that, the cycle doesn't matter. What matters more to you as the organization who's trying to get ready for the next batch of applications that are due is to worry less about the cycle and worry more about your preparation. We've been podcasting about that idea the past couple of days about how do you prepare for fundraising? How do you prepare for grant writing? How do you prepare for the process of generating revenue for your organization. And when you're not able to properly prepare, you're leaving money on the table. You're leaving yourself open to losing out on what would be a powerful opportunity for your nonprofit. And I think part of it is people worrying about cycles, although that has some sense of relevancy, as you can hear from my answer. But I think a more profound, deeper, and strategic way of looking at it is, regardless of the cycle that grants are released in, no matter what time of year they're released, what am I doing? What is our organization doing to position ourselves for what is to come? What is our organization doing to help our cause, knowing that we are a singular institution that is putting out multiple applications to multiple organizations, and knowing that there's a repetitive nature to this, knowing that there are trends in the applications that we are submitting, trends that are normalized across the board with some nuances. What are we doing as an organization, as an institution, to prepare? And when you think about that, perspective, you tend to lose focus on the cycle itself. That becomes irrelevant. You do want to hit it right, and the timing has to be right for you to be ready to submit a grant app and respond to the inquiry of a funder. But then if you're thinking strategically about it, you're more concerned about our preparedness, our ability to be responsive, our ability to provide a quality answer, our ability to generate outputs, which are grant apps, answer to grant apps, in a reasonable amount of time. That is critical. That is more important than the cycle. When you consider that the strategy matters more than the cycle, then you can look at the cycles as a secondary issue and say, all right, our preparedness can respond to any cycle, whether it's a dry cycle or a very robust cycle, right? That is the position you want to be in, the preparedness for what is to come. And that I think holds up a lot of organizations from finding the success that they're targeting. I think the lack of preparedness holds up a lot of organizations from identifying opportunities for success and progress towards their fundraising goals. I think that the lack of preparedness stands in the way of a lot of people finding consistency in their ability to deliver on what is key and critical for their organization. And because that is lost on many organizations, that is lost on the professionals within nonprofits, there will always seem to a group of people that we just missed the cycle. It will always seem that we just missed the deadline, or we just can't really position ourselves well to get the app in at the right time. No, it's less about the cycle. It's less about the due date. It's less about time. It's more about the preparedness. And I go into, again, extreme detail in a Grant Writing 101 Masterclass because there are things that can be done that can make a difference in preparing the organization to do awesomeness, to do awesome things, to be great. And it's all about your ability to prepare. Try one more here. I'll answer this question, but again, the answer to this is it's tied to who you are as an organization. So the question is, what type of grants are available to my organization? It depends. It depends on the problem you're trying to solve. It depends on the industry you're in. It depends on what project you're trying to engage in. It just truly depends. And what I caution you against is becoming an organization that is focused on multiple needs and interests and outcomes and goals. What that means is, if you are trying to save the whales and you're trying to save puppies, That's a tough ask unless your general goal is to save all animals, right? That's a singular concept with different disciplines under it, and even that's a stretch. If you're all about reducing the emissions of the vehicles that we drive, and you're also trying to end sex trafficking. That's kind of hard to tie together. Those are just two separate concepts. You want to generally have a singular approach to your work, a singular concept, singular goal, which is why it's always healthy for an organization to have an organizational mission. With the mission, you're able to identify who you are and what you are about. When you're able to do that, you may notice in your strategy document or in your goals that there are cascading outcomes or outputs that you're really targeting that's important to you. And that's normal. But that singular thought, that singular goal tells you who you are. And in turn, it tells you what type of grants that makes sense for you to go after, right? You can't go after saving all animals and ending the emissions. I mean, there could be a tie in there, but really you got to have a focus, something that you're known for, something that you're good at. Once you have an idea of what that thing is, then you can start to talk about what type of grants are available from my institution, from my organization. And there may be variations of availability of what is available and what is going to be made known, or what you may qualify for, rather. But it really, the answer to that begins and ends with what you are focused on, and that's it, right? I'm gonna pause here, and I might do a couple more podcasts in the future where I'm answering questions that I get behind the scenes in messages or DMs or emails. But it's important that you begin to think deeply about how you're going to position your organization to triple fundraising results and build six-figure programs. And for those of you who are in mature organizations, that's all you're thinking about. How do we get more revenue in? How do we continue to generate revenue? That makes sense for us. That makes sense for our customers, our stakeholders, the work that we do, etc. And I encourage you to join us for the Grant Writing 101 Masterclass. It is an online platform that I created where I'm teaching the principles and concepts of how to triple fundraising results, how to build multiple six-figure programs that ultimately feed into the creation and development of multi-million-dollar nonprofit organizations. If that's what you're after, if that's what you are trying to go after, then this program, this class that I created is for you. It's over 11 hours of teaching, multiple toolkits and handouts, and growing. The library is continuously growing. We are adding to it as we speak. We are in the process of producing and developing content for that particular school, and it's added. And once you secure your spot and secure your membership, you have to pay no other fee, because you're going to get all the updates and all the trimmings that are coming down the pike. If you have not joined, why don't you go ahead and join and secure your spot? Join the other students, join the other cohort members who are on this journey of building financially successful nonprofits. That's my mission. That's my goal, to help you do that. And you can do that by going to mysixfigurefunding.com. Again, that's mysixfigurefunding.com. We'll be glad to register you and secure your seat, and to learn with you and help you build a financially successful nonprofit. This is the Dr. William Clark podcast. We'll see you in the next episode.